What exactly is idolatry? The Encyclopedia Britannica defines idolatry in Christianity and Judaism as the worship of someone or something other than God as though it were God. According to Tim Keller, who is a pastor and Christian apologist, an idol is anything more important to you than God, anything you seek to give you what only God can give. So basically, anything we're seeking to fill that void. And this void, sometimes we don't have any idea why we feel it. The first of the 10 commandments God gave to Moses tells us, "You shall have no other gods before me." But our non-Jewish people bound by those 10 commandments, the Old Covenant. Believe it or not, there is a lot of disagreement on that subject, so I'll answer that by saying this. In Matthew chapter 22, the Sadducees and Pharisees were trying to trap Jesus again. One of the Pharisees, a lawyer, asked him, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets." So basically, love God and love people. Not coincidentally, the first 4 of the 10 commandments address worshiping God, and the remaining 6 address how we're supposed to treat others. If we love others as much as we love ourselves, as Jesus commanded, we will honor our parents, we won't murder, we won't cheat on our spouses, we won't steal from others, we won't lie about people, and we won't want something that belongs to someone else. Now to the flip side of that coin. Jesus commanded us to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, and mind. Specifically, per the first 4 commandments, we are told to have no other gods before him. We are not to make any graven images to worship, which was really important for Israel at the time because they were literally surrounded by nations who worshiped idols. We are told not to take the name of the Lord in vain and to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. So to reiterate what Jesus said, love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and mind. This means to put God first in absolutely everything, before your spouse, before your kids, before your grandkids, before everything and everyone. But here's the thing, when we put God first, everything and every other relationship will fall into its proper place. And this takes me back to an earlier video, Did Jesus Say to Hate My Family?, which revolved around Luke 14:26. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father, mother, wife, and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Now, this is not a literal hate, but a putting God before all others kind of living. And you might be wondering how family, our children specifically, can become an idol. One way is by putting everything you have into your kids and neglecting your relationship with the Lord. And sometimes parents want the approval of their children more than they want the approval of the Lord, so they neglect to bring their children up in the discipline and in the instruction of the Lord. As I stated earlier, idolatry is the worship of something or someone other than God as though it were God. As Christians, we are kind of proud to have idols that we love to hate. For some reason, it's easy to see how greed, immorality, materialism, pride, and sexual sin can take our attention away from God. But it's not as easy to see how the things we love to love can do the exact same thing. It doesn't have to be a graven image that you bow down and worship before it becomes an idol. Our jobs, sports teams, hobbies, and our precious time alone can be an idol. Regarding how our children can become idols, I gave a couple of examples previously, but if you allow your kids or grandkids to control you, if you put them or their wants before God, if you value them more than you value God, you have made them idols. I don't know about you, but I have heard the phrase, "I don't want to go to church," for over 30 years now, first with children, now grandchildren. And sometimes I even said it myself, and I'm ashamed to admit it, but there was a time when we allowed our children and their desire not to go to church to control whether we went to church or not. I didn't want them to be mad at me, so after a certain age, I didn't make them go. And I'm not blaming them. I am 100% blaming me for not having the backbone to do what I knew was right. And frankly, sometimes I was lazy and I just wanted to sleep in myself. Another way we idolize our children and grandchildren is putting their activities before God. Now, that's a big one because Sundays have pretty much been taken over by sports in America. I saw a meme on social media one day that said, there is less than a 0.03% chance that your child will become a professional athlete, but there is a 100% chance that your child will stand before Jesus one day. Get them to church. And the verse this meme is based upon is Mark 9:42. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung about his neck and he were thrown into the sea. Now, back to sports. Do we put our own sports interests before God? Whether we play them or we're just a spectator, what do we put first? As I talked about in an earlier video, there was a time when I did do that. I put my sports team pretty much in front of everything else. Now, what about our hobbies and our time alone? Do we prioritize those over God? And now for a couple more that might get me into trouble with people, especially these days. What about politics or social causes? Do we put our politics or social causes before God? Do we really think a single man, woman, political party, or social movement is the answer to our problems? No, not a chance. But what about worthwhile causes like saving the planet from pollution or saving animals from extinction? Well, Romans 1:25 speaks about this and those who worshiped and served the creature or creation rather than the creator. A popular public figure posted this statement the other day. The replacement of God in the human heart with gods of other sorts, whether it's from the state to the search for subjective authenticity, ends in the worst destruction imaginable. When people look outside of God for their identity, for their satisfaction in life, for their reason for existing, it will only result in destruction. When we look to politics, politicians, or groups to solve our problems, we're going to be disappointed 100% of the time. Many people try to find their identity within a community, whatever that community may be, and then submerge themselves in that particular ideology. But when you choose to drape yourself or put on the jersey of Team Trump, Team Biden, Team LGBTQ, Team Black American, Team White American, Team Conservative, Team Liberal, Team whatever, it displaces God in our lives. And if we identify with anything other than Christ, we are making that thing an idol. We are putting that person or that group and our identification with it before we put God. Now, when I started researching idolatry and the kinds of things that would be considered idols, I was a little shocked. I guess I never really thought about my family as being an idol or identifying with a certain group as being a form of idolatry. I mean, I personally knew that when my love of football took precedence over everything else, that I had a priorities problem, but only recently did I admit to myself that I had made the Philadelphia Eagles an idol to me. But the fact is, anything that we elevate above God, anything we invest more time in than we do God, anything we identify with more than God is an idol. And the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 10:14, therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. Now, I've listed a wide array of things that can become idols in our lives, but how do we know that something has become an idol? I mean, what's the difference between caring for and admiring something or someone and making it or them an idol? A few things to consider are, number one, does this thing or person glorify me or does it glorify God? Are we using material wealth or things that we have, including spiritual gifts, to honor God or ourselves? Number two, does this thing or person consume our thoughts? And number three, are we using this person or thing to gain what can only be gained from God? Are we using this thing to fill a void in our lives that can only be filled by God? Now, I'm not saying that we can't adore our families. I'm not saying that we can't enjoy the blessings God has given us, our homes, our financial stability, sports, or any number of things. I'm not even saying that we can't be involved in politics or socially positive movements. What I'm saying is that all of these things have a place. They have a certain priority, but our number one priority should be God and what He wants for our lives. And He wants our worship. He wants our time. He wants us to study His word and know why we believe what we believe so we can share the gospel with others. He does not want our time with Him to be considered a chore or just a box that we feel like we have to check off at the beginning of each day or the end of each day. He doesn't want a small portion of us. He wants all of us all the time. He wants our every thought and our every action to be guided by our love for Him. And I'm not perfect, and there have been plenty of times in the past when God has not exactly been number one on my priority list. But now that He is, and I'm making a concerted effort in that direction, I'm different. I think differently. My priorities are different. I don't watch or listen to the things I used to because I want to fill my mind with good subject matter. And I don't really miss the old things that I once found such enjoyment in not so long ago. I love the verse in Proverbs that says, "In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths." Now, that's the New King James Version. The NIV translation states that He will make your paths straight. And I don't really like that translation because that implies that there will always be a straight and obvious road if we acknowledge and submit to God. And I found that to be 100% inaccurate. In fact, the last 9 months have been anything but straight and obvious. It's been more like a roller coaster that flips you upside down and inside out every which way, resulting in sore muscles and whiplash. There has been no straight path about it, but God has given divine direction. And these days I find myself asking, especially when I react questionably to a situation, did what I do or say please God, or did it hurt Him? Am I trying to glorify Him or me? And I'll make a little confession here. My road has been a gradual one, and I'm actually a little envious of those that had a 180 conversion when they met Jesus. Not the kind of sinful envy where I want to take the experience that they had away from them and make it my own. So maybe that's not really envy, but nevertheless, it's not the length of time that it takes you to get there. It's actually getting to the point where God is number one in your life that matters, because everyone in your life that loves you will benefit from you reaching that level of spiritual maturity. Now, to be clear, everyone will benefit, but not everyone will be supportive. There will be some who don't want you to get closer to God. They want you to be the old you, the you that they've always been able to relate to. And this change in you might not be as positive for them if they're not walking the road that God wants them to be walking. Thankfully, God is so very patient with us, and Psalms 103:8 tells us the Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in mercy. And that verse gives me so much comfort because, frankly, I can be a mess. I yield to my emotions rather than what I know many times, but those times are becoming fewer and farther between. It's been quite a while since my last video, and I'm not really sure how often I'll be posting in the future. There are a lot of changes going on right now, and I'm trying to balance life without stressing myself out too much. So until next time, when I have no idea what I'll be talking about, though I'm certain that God will provide a topic, keep your eyes on Jesus, depend on the Lord to direct your path, put Him first, and trust that He will work all things together for the good of those who love Him. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and thanks so much for watching.